I knew this topic was going to come up at some point in time, but thanks to my guy, Ralph Amsden, who sent me a video. It is up for discussion today, and this is the biggest mistake in the BCS era of college football history. And I just so happened to be a part of it. And that was my 2000-2001 Oregon Ducks team getting left out of the national championship for Nebraska, who got a chance to go and get beat down by Miami. And we were supposed to be playing them boys. And you're like, oh, George, it didn't matter. You were going to get blown out. Nah, that's not what that means. I've told Jonathan Vilma anytime he's been on the show with me, anything like anybody who will listen. Oh, but they had so many NFL guys. Listen, I'm going to break the whole thing down to you, how it happened. Because the Oregon Ducks, number 2 in the BCS and the USA Today poll, but some kind of way the magic BCS formula put Nebraska in the 2 spot and us in the 3 spot to play Colorado in the Fiesta Bowl. And do you know what we proceeded to do to Colorado in that Fiesta Bowl? 38-16. It was a bloodbath. And do you know what picked this scab for me? It was my man Ralph Amsden getting a chance to talk to Clinton Portis. And then he had the audacity to say this.
All right, George Wrighster, I'm here with Clinton Portis. I told him that you wanted Miami in 2001. I told him you're on it every day talking about it 20 years later.
Hey, for those 20 years, I think we wanted to play Oregon. We really wanted to play them. Joy Harrison, Maurice Morris, they had a lot of talent. But they would have got the same treatment that Nebraska got. We would have smashed them as well. So it didn't matter who we played. Just our mindset and the team that we had was going to dominate. It didn't matter who we played. You could have combined those two teams. We was going to beat the brakes off of them.
I was just living my best life, and then this text comes out of nowhere from Ralph. And then just picks the scab. So now I got to tell you about it. Let's go back to how this happened. Because you had Oregon in the 2 spot in the polls, and you had Colorado and Nebraska right behind them. So now let's figure this out. Oregon had 1 loss. Nebraska only had 1 loss as well. So let's go back to the regular season, because at the end of the regular season, Colorado beat that same Nebraska team that ended up in the national championship by 26 points, 62-36. Miami only beat them by 23 points, 37-14. So you're like, okay, so why was Colorado not in the national championship? Because Colorado had lost to Fresno State right before that in the last 4 minutes of the game at Fresno State. Otherwise, it might have been them in the national championship. Now, everybody wants to talk about this Miami team and how many pros that they had on the roster. But it's not like that's all that were playing on the roster was pros. And my Oregon team, who people were like, oh, George, because they forget Oregon then was not what Oregon is now, but that particular team had a ton of NFL players. And we've seen time and time again, NFL players playing against NFL players. Oh, just so happens you can compete. And do you know what? We did not have to play Miami 10 times. We had to play them 1 time, 1 day, our best game, them have a good game. And it was curtains, national championship for us. So you might be like, George, maybe if you guys hadn't blown the game against Stanford, maybe you would have been in the national championship had you been undefeated. Okay, I can grant you that. But that still does not mean that you're not screwed when they put Nebraska in and then you go and destroy the team that destroyed Nebraska. But let's get back to the rosters, though, because we had Joey Harrington at our quarterback, and you cannot debate Joey Harrington and Ken Dorsey advantage Ducks in that situation. Miami actually had 5 NFL running backs, but the only one that was really getting carries was Clinton Portis. Now you have Willis McGahee, Frank Gore, but they were only getting garbage time carries because Portis was just that good. And on Oregon's team, you had 2nd round pick Maurice Morris in the backfield, and you had Ontario Smith is one of the biggest what-if stories in all of the NFL. And both were 1,000-yard backs, and both played a huge roles in the Fiesta Bowl victory, and obviously NFL players. Oh, what about the Hall of Famer Andre Johnson at wide receiver? Yeah, they had him. But on the Oregon team, Sammy Parker, Keenan Howry, Jason Willits, all played in the NFL. Oh, Jeremy Shockey. Oh, Jeremy Shockey was a hell of a player in the NFL. But you know who else was on that team? Your boy, George Wrighster. Oh, not one, but you had two. You had two tight ends playing who played in the NFL. Oh, and Justin Peele just so happened to get 10 years. Oh, so it wasn't no slouches going on. And you had 4 NFL players in Miami secondary getting significant time. And in Oregon secondary, you had 3. You had Steve Smith, Rashad Bowman, and Keith Lewis. Oh, wait, all NFL players. Do you think that they were going to give up 200 plus yards to Andre Johnson in the national championship like Nebraska did? Absolutely not. But where they would have had an advantage is in the front 7, because 6 to 7 of those guys were draft picks on the offensive and defensive line. And on Oregon, you had 3 or 4 instead of 6 or 7. Yeah, on the defensive line, oh, you'd be like, they had Vince Wilfork. He was on the bench at the time. And we had Junior Ciavi'i, Igor Olshansky, Saul Patu. Like, come on, man. We had dudes on that team too. And no matter what Miami fans and people are like, oh yeah, there's no way. There was a way. Because do you know who had more NFL players? Oregon had more than Nebraska at that time. So all y'all out there talking, it is the biggest what if in all of college football history.